Allison Weiner is a NewsNation producer who's been poring over these documents all day, and she joins me now live with the details. Okay, so that fifth man, Allison, Paul Grice, turns out he made some overwhelmingly stupid mess-ups, and that is he had a bandage on his right finger and told some stories several times to several people that didn't match, and he asked a friend some very, very incriminating questions. So walk me through all of that.
It's so interesting. You were waiting for him to get arrested and kept wondering why he hadn't gotten arrested when the police were busy figuring out how many mistakes he had made along the way that they can use against him at trial. One of the major mistakes that he made was that he used the kind of O.J. Simpson, how I cut myself defense, which it changed initially when the police asked him about it. He said that he had cut it, working on his car, on his truck. And then later he told a friend or an acquaintance that he had cut it by working on a fence. He was cutting fence, and that's how he cut it. So that changed. He also, which was most incredible, went and talked to someone who ended up being a witness to the police and told the police that he had asked questions about how long DNA can last deep in the ground in dirt. He also wanted to know if there was some sort of a guy who could get a family out of the country to go to Mexico. How do you get a guy and his family out of the country? It's interesting, too, that he, was just busy chatting about different things. Can you get DNA off of different things? I mean, and when I was reading this, the affidavit that went with the search warrant, it was just quite incredible. Like during that time, I think based on what we're seeing in the affidavit, thought about running, but wasn't sure how to do it. So he had to check with a whole bunch of different witnesses.
When talking to the police. Oh dear. Talk about a time you shouldn't call a friend. All right, let's talk about that iPhone. I want to go rapid fire. I got 6 more things I want to ask you. The iPhone repair guy turns the phone over to the cops. Wow. Do we know why he was suspicious?
Well, I think everybody kind of knew as soon as these women disappeared, there was stuff in the news about the custody battle. I mean, that happened pretty quickly, that there was bad blood. And that Tiffany also had a reputation as a very small community, as Brian has told you many times. And so I think he probably knew about that. But he also, the thing you didn't mention is he gave it back to her. So the police were able to track, and it says this in the affidavit, that generally people return to the scene of a crime. They were able to see what she was up to, who she was writing to after the crime. And she thought, oh, they don't know that I have this phone. I mean, and she could move around with it and they could still ping it and everything like that. So he was very helpful to the authorities and likely will be a big witness.
Phones show, if she had the phones on her, if she is a killer, the phones show where you were at all points of the day. So if you took the phone along for the ride with the burner phones, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but after the police took that data, they gave it back to the phone repair guy who gave it back to Grandma Tiffany. So she was still moving around.
Brilliant. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, I'm going to ask you about the victims' iPhones too. What did because we've been wondering where their phones were. What do we know?
It was in Cole Twombly's truck. I mean, not a very good fact for the Twombly fan, I mean.
Are you kidding me?
It's just such a tragedy, this whole thing. I mean, it's these people that, it's just a real tragedy. But it was in their truck.
They didn't even think to bury the iPhones with the victims. They kept the iPhones in the truck. Okay, let's talk about the burial. 10 feet down always amazed me. Now we've come to find out that the women were buried in a freezer chest 10 feet under. I have all sorts of theories, but what do we know about it?
Well, we don't really know, but I also have a theory because I know how carefully they tried to cover the area. We were able to show on your show that area, how they put hay over it, how they put bricks, concrete inside to make the ground level. But I think this is an area with a lot of animals. And if there's any kind of smell coming from the ground, you're going to have animals gathering around there and digging things up. And I think that was a perfect way to seal the women in. And the worst part about it to me, when I thought about it, was just that these women were never going to be found. I mean, if it hadn't, I guess been for the confidential witness and all this other evidence we're now learning about, I mean, their families never would have known what happened to them.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.